Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to DADCAW. This is actually the last day of the week that I could record this while still maintaining the goal of hanging out and doing one a week. So kudos to me for actually doing that, I suppose. It's funny because as early as Wednesday, I was thinking about actually doing one of these, and obviously all I did was thinking. Not much else, though, because, of course, I did not until now. So I hope your first proper week of February, has kicked off nicely and that you've had a splendid entry into the second month of the year. It's kind of crazy to think that it's the second month of the year already. But I think I said a few times, including probably on the latest DADCAW, that January blew by. Thankfully, the first week of February has, by comparison, dragged on. And it almost sounds like you're saying it negatively when you say it like that, but I'm actually quite content with that. I think the more I notice the time that I'm spending, presumably the better time I'm having with it. So at least the more present I am, the more productive I can be in theory. So there is that. And there's a whole host of connected topics to that. Like, obviously, if you're productive, you're probably also happy with the time that you're being productive with. But, at the same time, I guess I was productive throughout January, and that month flew by. And, at the end of it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess we have a almost playable mission. So in related news, I figured we can open this DADCAW up with a bit of a system check, reference to Razor Claw X's stuff, of course, not the anime stuff, the only non-anime stuff he made, which was still pretty anime. So I just wanted to get some work done on Stormborn and my Mapcraft submission. That was kind of like the stuff that I wanted to do this week, and so far so good. Stormborn's kind of dead in the water as far as updates are concerned. If you haven't been following the modding streams, perhaps this can be a more regular update through DADCAW that I can bring you guys up to speed. So the reason why Stormborn is not faring too well is because, as it turns out, in order to make Zerg function on the same level as Terran and Protoss, which aren't necessarily functioning as great as they could be, but certainly better than the Zerg by comparison, I basically have to break the priority system. So every request that you give an AI for a unit or a structure or an expansion or anything like that, any explicit request to build a unit or to train a unit or to get an upgrade or research, it comes with a priority. And that value dictates how soon the AI will actually read the request and then attempt to satisfy it if it has the tech requirements and the money to do so. And of course, like an available builder in certain cases or an available production structure. So basically, based on its tools, it can request certain things, or it can satisfy certain requests, rather. And of course, Knave's work recently has allowed it to discard requests it can't immediately satisfy. However, apparently this doesn't fully work as you would expect, because they can still get hung up trying to work on a bunch of requests of a high priority. And then any request that's lower than that will simply never be iterated upon. So they can get stuck hanging up, essentially, constantly, trying to get work done on certain requests that are higher priority than everything else, but for some reason they fail to do. And it's not even like it makes sense. Zerg in particular are just failing to produce drones. It might be one of those things where if I allowed them a cheat where they could build Nidus canals and Nidus canals could produce drones directly like factories, maybe this wouldn't be a problem. But that's such like an absurd cheat to have to do just to make it so that they can produce workers, and the workers, if they're at an absurd supply, will at least be built, but then they'll hang up on the last couple or something and they won't produce anything else. Like worker drone will still be the highest priority request of their entire request log, and they'll never finish it for whatever reason. Like that'll never go away. So it's quite frustrating, because it goes back to a couple of DADCAWs ago. I talked about not having proper debugging tools. We can't really understand what the AI is getting hung up on per se. Now, we do have some insight as to what they are actually requesting in a given situation, but we only can see it after the fact, after the game is already closed. So it's difficult to track, all right, well, when did they exactly break? Because who knows when it started to loop infinitely between two requests or something. So it's very difficult, even with the tools that we do have, which obviously are way miles ahead of any tools that anybody had years ago. It's very difficult to actually get an answer to what's causing the AI to break. And this has led iQuire and I and a few other people like Vic on the stream. We've basically just decided we're going to have to make a new request system, or a system that is similar to requests and will work alongside it, and will request most things through this new system and leave certain things like defenders and perhaps attackers or perhaps just guards or something like that. More autonomous in that sense. The drawback of anything that is autonomous, like the AI immediately knowing, hey, I've got to defend myself, so I'm going to build these workers or build these units for defense. You don't actually have express control over what priority those are at. So oftentimes you might have noticed yourself when playing against melee AI that sometimes the AI doesn't do anything and then you attack it and then it starts doing something. This is the same behavior I'm describing where it's getting hung up on priorities, because every so often it'll get attacked and then it will trigger its defense mechanism, which will tell it to build units at a higher priority than anything else. Generally speaking, the priority is usually about 140 and so or 120 or something like that. So if your priority is high enough, then your requests can the defense refresh thing can actually supersede whatever request they were getting hung up on, and then they'll basically unfuck themselves for a short period of time. So I actually came up with a system that would do this for the AI, but I think maybe just based on the fact that I have priority requests that are higher priority than even these defense calls, this no longer works for them. So I'm sure there's some balance I can strike, and I'm sure I will continue to investigate that and try to figure something out. But suffice it to say, I've like 3 or 4 days straight of trying to figure this out and investigating and developing new debug ways, like adding debug printouts to the log and all this other stuff to the plugin, and obviously fucking around with the AI scripts themselves, just to get pretty much nowhere. We are a little bit more armed with information than we were before, but it's just very frustrating to slam my head against that wall over and over again. So I think for the time being, I'll take a bit of a break, and then maybe I can return back to it at some point after the mapcraft submission is over, or just maybe like sometime this coming week. Just take a couple days break and work on my mapcraft submission, work on Stormborn, work on Hydra, maybe something else that will allow me to explore AI, and maybe by writing a brand new script rather than editing existing stuff, that will put me in a mindset where I'm actually trying to design a system that I will then monitor and see how it works and see what needs to be tweaked and see what kind of balance we can strike. It is really notable that Zerg is really the only AI that has this huge issue when it comes to priorities. And even when you fix it for the early game, you then fuck them for the late game where they get hung up and even the defense refresh no longer works. So maybe the key is to keep things a lower priority than the defense calls, so that when they are requesting defenders, that does unfuck them, and then have an automated defense refresh, which I've already developed, where every 30 seconds they rebuild defenders even if they don't necessarily need them because they're not under attack, stuff like that. It's just so weird because like there's so many technical issues that if I tried to explain them all, we would be here for quite a long while, that plague AI and seem to have a disproportionate effect on Zerg. Like I saw marked performance improvements across all of the AIs, regardless of their race, when implementing certain new systems, but Zerg were most disproportionately negatively impacted by these problems, and even the fixes to these problems didn't fix it for them. And I'm wondering how much of that is requirements, like they need some sort of specialty system. And I'm wondering how much of that is maybe like me overcorrecting, because I'm thinking, well, Zerg are fucked up more than the other races, so I've got to overcorrect in that sense. Maybe that's too much. And what it essentially amounts to is me feeling like I almost have to go back to the drawing board. And maybe that's something that I can develop as far as like brand new AI for something like my mapcraft submission, or something like a new Hydra map, or rewriting old AI for an older Hydra map. Something like that will be better than trying to like Frankenstein a working system when I'm not even really 100% familiar with how the AI for Stormborn were written, because I wrote so much AI after Stormborn, and it's also been months and months since Stormborn. So you can imagine where that would be somewhat challenging to get reacquainted with. And not to mention, of course, my multi-threaded style of scripting yields scripts that are easy enough for me to follow, but also scripts that require you to actually do a lot of following. So like even if you know how to read my scripts, you do have to spend a bit of time acquainting yourself with the systems. And it even becomes more difficult for me because I work with updated versions of these systems in my current AI, and then I go back to older systems and I'm trying to remember like, wait, what were the drawbacks of this system again? What were the specs? Like what exactly was happening in the system that I eventually fixed? And then that usually leads me to just fixing it, like patching it in that sense. Like a certain function that I wrote, I'll just try to like redo in that sense. But it's a bit of a mess, as you can tell. So I won't bore you with any more technical details as far as AI is concerned. But suffice it to say, we do have a bit of like a leg up the next time we do write some Zerg AI. I have a couple of strategies that I can still employ that would make more sense to employ in a new script than in an old one. And so I am looking forward to getting into the mapcraft submission development again, and hopefully getting some stuff done there. Though this does leave Toddborn in a predicament because, of course, I was still waiting on some fixes to crashes and freezes and additional features for the Cullen classes and stuff before I released the first map of that's hilarious campaign publicly. And I was also going to work on the second mission, theoretically, in the first week of February. Instead, I wound up balancing Stormborn and my mapcraft submission rather than Stormborn and Toddborn, which was the original plan. Now, here we are looking at, the end of the first week. We're not exactly able to set down Stormborn just yet, and obviously we worked more on my mapcraft submission than I thought I would. And so I was surprised at how excited I was to get work done on that. So that will continue, and perhaps instead of working on Stormborn again, I can work on Toddborn. Just change out one Born for another. And the idea would, in theory, be that I would be able to finish the second map's production, and then as soon as iQuare is able to spend some time on the fixes to the plugin and, figuring out, helping me troubleshoot certain things, basically, we will be able to actually get that out there to you guys, even if the classes are not complete. Because, of course, that's more iQuare time, essentially. And obviously he's working on his own stuff, including his own full toilet submission. So I don't want to distract him too much, but the crashes and stuff, the stuff that is preventing people from playing even a proof of concept / tech demo version of the first map, those are big deals. So the sooner we can get rid of those, the better. And hopefully that can be by the end of the second week, but time will tell. And the other thing I don't know if it's right to say I'm looking forward to playing Deus Ex, but I am looking forward to starting the playthrough of Deus Ex just so that it's something a little different for both myself and for the viewers. So I hope you'll join me for those videos. Those will probably be starting Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are the days that I confirmed have off from work, so I can do my mod stream in the morning, and then around the same time we normally do Fraud Night, which is 2:30, 3 p.m. Eastern time, is when I'll be running that. So that'll be exciting. As you can tell by my voice, I'm very excited by it. So this coming week is going to be pretty neat, actually. It's obviously going to be my return to commentated gameplay that isn't related to Mapcrap or Fraud Night, so should be fun. Mixplay will be on, should also be fun, and I may have to save myself at some point by turning it down so I don't get ear-raped. We'll see. It depends on if Rimtech's headache has been fixed, because he did say he was suffering earlier. So hopefully he gets into shape so he can smash those buttons because they're free. So what else? There's some other stuff that I could talk about, I suppose, related to this coming week, but I'll just save it for the viewers to experience. But I figured I would update on the channel map stuff that I mentioned anyway. And that's kind of the system check that we're looking at, is what did this last week look like, and what are we looking forward to? I do have a more philosophical / basic spoken word point that's been on my mind, and it's actually related to quitting Brood War. Now, it's not. Don't panic. I'm not actually quitting Brood War, but I'm interested in at least moving on in some part, still working on it in part and then working on something else in full, or with the other part of my time that I have. At some point, we're going to have Unreal 4, not really modding streams, but developer streams. So you can look forward to those. I don't know exactly when those will be. The earliest I could imagine would be March, but I think I would rather study programming a bit more before I worry about that, just so that I gain the basics, a good understanding of the fundamentals. And then I can move on to actually getting my feet wet and my hands dirty and all these other analogies that we use. But in theory, it could be interesting to see where those go. And I don't know. It's interesting to think about the idea that I've decided, rather than try to mod Counter-Strike as an example, because for Fraud Night, we really don't have that much to play. It's shitty Brood War mods until one of us makes a good one, and FPS, CSGO stuff, right, for FPS. And the CSGO stuff is not as great as it could be, but I don't feel like developing a level inside CSGO, and it's also a game that doesn't perform that well either. So it's actually gotten to the point where it's more it's a better move for me to go make my own FPS than it is to mod an existing FPS because of how restrictive modding is in CSGO and because of how not performant the game is, as well as a bunch of other factors. So that's fine. As silly and absurd as that premise is, I'm actually okay with that. It's really, really funny to me that that's where we are now. So just some more food for thought, I suppose. But yeah, the idea of leaving Brood War behind, I've always felt like it was inevitable, because I didn't, as much as I am an absurd human being, I did not imagine that I would live out all of my years working within Brood War. And I actually even had a conversation earlier today with a family member talking about how, like, as much as I am happy about where I'm at, where I'm able to do daily mod streams and sometimes, twice in the same day do some sort of stream, be it another mod stream or something else like the Fraud Nights, it is really nice to be able to do that and to have the freedom to be able to do that while still justifying my existence from a financial standpoint by working part-time. That's really nice. And I count that as a blessing pretty much every day. On a daily basis, I'm reminded of how useful that is to varying degrees, how fortunate I am. And but at the same time, it's like I'm still pretty far from where I want to be in terms of what I'm actually working on. Like, I do want to work on Brood War content, but it's only because, like, I know that this will be important for me going forward when developing my own RTS. Like, this is the kind of the closest facsimile that I can get to for developing my own RTS content that would deliver a quality RTS experience, right? So I'm developing my own content within the confines of an existing engine and an existing setting most of the time. And I'm using that opportunity with the intent to produce high quality content for an end user, usually myself, because I'm really starved for quality RTS content. So that's what got me into this in the first place. As soon as it becomes more feasible for me to deliver content for myself and other people to play in the RTS genre that is high quality, as soon as it becomes more feasible to do that by making my own RTS, that will be at the point where I think I'll just go all in on that. Sooner do that than work on something related to Brood War, just because it's something that I've been doing for a long time. And in so many ways, we are pushing the envelope. We're at the bleeding edge of development. We're designing new systems so that we can do things that we want to do. And you have to wonder at some point, like, how much of an investment into the engine is too much to make sense? At what point do you have to take a step back from what you're doing, from all the data extenders that you're planning and all of the other crazy functionality that you're planning, and say, like, at what point am I better served relegating myself to working within a shittier system for now and not worrying about advancing, just seeing what is the exact potential of this setting, like exact potential of this engine, while also investigating, developing, researching the production of a new engine that will completely supersede this and eventually be a completely new system. I still think there's value and merit in working within Brood War and developing my skills and developing my understanding of things like programming and level design and tech tree design especially. But it is one of those things that, as much as it is like a trial that I can go through, it's also one of those things that you really, it grinds down a lot, especially when we're talking about stuff related to this Stormborn AI investigation where we're trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. We don't have any good debug tools to do that. We have no idea what's happening. We don't have to worry about that nearly as much in the context of making a new game in something like Unreal or a new engine. So we just have a lot more programming related overhead to deal with in that sense, where we have to figure out what to do. And it's not even really, overhead's kind of the wrong word. It's more like that's work that we know we have to do. Whereas in Brood War, that's kind of done for us, but it's done in such a shitty way that it's almost, it's definitely a negative in many respects. So just musing really, but, while I do think that there's merit to continuing to work within Brood War, I cannot promise you how much longer I will agree with that sentiment. And I don't know how much longer that will be true, more importantly. I don't know how much longer it will make more sense to stick within Brood War than to go work on my own RTS. So I guess this is the first time I've really talked about it in a formalized setting as opposed to just shooting the shit on my mod stream. But yeah, just keep that in mind as you're rolling through the internet and trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing next, because I guess that's what some people think about. So there you go. That is indeed it. So I will be back tomorrow for another mod stream, as I always am. That's pretty much been true no matter what day you listen to this log and you hear that sentence. That's pretty much been true for like the past 3 or 4 months now. So let's just keep it going for as long as we can. Maybe eventually those will be Unreal streams. You never know. But stay tuned for Deus Ex. Hopefully that is a psychotic enough stream for your liking, and hopefully I'm able to survive it. So, thanks everybody for sticking with me during this Brood War filled TISM time, and have yourselves a splendid evening or morning, or fuck you, Ultralisks. You're in like some psychotic time zone. I don't even know what time it is for you. Bye.